Well, then I'm going to call this meeting to order. And that means we can go live on Facebook. All right, Ms. Wilson.
Okay, this meeting is being held as an electronic meeting pursuant to and in compliance with the City of Richmond Ordinance 2020-093 and the school board's resolution that was approved on April 20th, 2020. Simultaneous translation is being provided tonight in Spanish via Zoom, and that link was provided in the notice. Once you are logged in, click the interpretation and select Spanish. All meeting participants are encouraged to speak slowly and deliberately to allow for accurate translation. The notice of the meeting stated that the meeting would be a virtual meeting and would be live streamed on the school division's Facebook page. The public could view it there, and the link was provided. The notice also stated that there would in-person public comment would not be provided. However, the public could send comments to the clerk, and the email address was included. Those comments have been posted to board docs. The agenda for the meeting was also posted to board docs, and once your roll is called, we will determine how many board members are participating. Are you ready for the roll call?
Yes.
Okay. Mrs. Dorr?
She's going to be late.
Okay. Mr. Barlow?
Here.
Ms. Gibson?
Here.
Mr. Young?
Present.
Dr. Sapini? Ms. Cosby? Mrs. Page?
Here.
Mrs. Burke?
Here.
And Ms. Owen?
Here.
6 of your 9 board members are present at the moment, Madam Chair.
So we have a quorum.
You do have a quorum.
All right, then do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Burke. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Barlow. Any discussion? All right, then let's vote.
Okay. Ms. Page?
Yes.
Ms. Cosby, has she joined us yet?
No.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Has Dr. Sapini joined us? Ms. Dorr still not present? Mr. Barlow?
Yes.
Ms. Gibson?
Yes.
Ms. Burke?
Yes.
And Ms. Owen?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-3.
All right, then can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the October 19th and October 22nd meetings?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Barlow. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Page. Excuse me, Ms. Page. Any discussion? All right, then let's have the vote, please.
Okay. Ms. Page?
Yes.
Ms. Cosby? Mr. Young?
Aye.
Dr. Sapini? Ms. Dorr? Mr. Barlow?
Yes.
Ms. Gibson?
Yes.
Ms. Burke?
Yes.
Ms. Owen?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, then we move to public information.
And we
Ms.
only
Wilson?
have one tonight. Tom Hartman, Expanding College Horizons. Here's a nice passage I found online. One of the authors is a UVA professor, and the quote is, "Most high-achieving, low-income students do not even apply to selective colleges despite being highly qualified for admission and success at these institutions. Because they do not apply, these students forego the generous academic resources, increased financial aid, and better collegiate and career opportunities that selective schools offer. To increase opportunities and improve outcomes for these students, we propose building on the success of an innovative intervention, the Expanding College Opportunities Project. As a relatively low cost of about $6 per student contacted, ECO sent the following to high-achieving, low-income students: targeted and personalized information on their college options, information on the process for applying, and details of the financial information relevant to their situations. The intervention had a profound effect on their college application behavior, leading to a substantial increase in their propensity to apply to more selective colleges commensurate with their academic achievements. Not only did students apply to more selective schools, but they were accepted and matriculated at such schools in greater numbers, and early evidence points to their academic success in these programs. The promising results of this low-cost program suggest that ECO should be expanded. This paper proposes steps to expand and improve ECO to reach more low-income, high-achieving students across the country by partnering with respected third-party organizations such as the College Board and ACT. ECO can also serve as a model for designing and applying this type of intervention to other populations of students. The success of the ECO project highlights the importance of researchers being able to access relevant government data to design targeted and effective programs and policies.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman. We always like to hear from you. All right, moving on to board action items. Our first one is to receive for action the audit work plan and expand the board finance committee to be the board finance and audit committee. So who is speaking to this? Is that you, Mr. Parker?
Yes, this is me. Good evening,
Hi, Mr.
everyone.
Parker.
So what we have today is first, I want to kind of go through these in order of which they should go. It's first the audit work plan for 2021, and then I'll go backwards. So our first work plan, and you guys can't see my screen. Hold on for me, please. Share screen. All right, so our work plan for internal audit for this year, I'm presenting to the board tonight our FY 2021 audit work plan for internal audit. Basically, the purpose of the work plan is kind of set forth what we're going to be doing in 2021, which has already started to a point, to a certain degree. For the procedures we did to perform this, basically we identified what we call an audit universe. This is everything that could be audited within RPS. And we took an approach this year because we haven't existed in 6 years, just about. A real basic approach is we took, the framework of the organizational charts by office, operating office, academic office, the talent office, so forth and so on. And we created, based on department, how many places we could actually go create audits, or we could perform audits, which is actually 28 auditable departments or processes within the school division or within the school system. And then from there, in conversations and meetings I have with Superintendent Cameras on a monthly basis, we kind of determine, because it's only two of us and we know how much bandwidth we have, we determined, operations would be a great place for us to start and kind of start doing audits and really get into it. I'm gonna just scroll down, and that really talks us through the identification of the audit universe, and then the prioritization of the audit topic. So again, here in discussing with the administration, Mr. Desko particularly, we talked about, what are the hot spots right now that we could be of a value add to both the board and to the administration. One of those things were, and you'll see as we go through the work plan down here in the FY audit work plan section, distribution of Chromebooks, leave balances, procurement and contracting processes. I want to take a step back and just tell you how we did this. We did this by high, medium, low, and we used what's called a risk assessment. So we tried to put everything on a benchmark or put them on an even playing field with the risk assessment, pretty much using the categories and weighted it up to 100% basically. And you'll see this down here. Let me scroll down a little bit. So here are all of our factors that go into the risk assessment. The budgeted expenditures, the financial exposures, number of staff, compliance with regulations, complexity of transactions, time expired since the last audit. The time expired since the last audit weighs about 18% of this whole thing. And as you know, because we haven't had an audit department in such a long time, pretty much all of them kind of came in under that high, under this 18%, all of them were right there high. All right, so I want to scroll back up, and I don't want to bore you with a lot of conversation and a lot of talking about this. So for our audits, so what we looked at here is we're talking about, with the exception of, and you'll see later, with the exception of those audits that we have to have per the regulation, which is student activity funds, right? We've been talking about that the last board meeting, and we still have more student activity data, student activity audit results to present. But with the exception of student activity funds, which takes up a majority of our time, we wanted to look at the distribution of Chromebooks and devices, which is high, being that we've just moved into the virtual world pretty much. We want to make sure that the controls actually exist, even though it's early on in the process. What we find out as auditors is if we can kind of audit and look at those controls and determine if the controls exist and they're operating the right way early on, we can kind of keep that thing going in the right direction throughout the life of the process. The next one, this was just at the request of, and I want to say at the request of the administration, personal leave balances and timekeeping. We just wanted to make sure and verify the controls around the leave balances and timekeeping. As we know, we are very manual here at Richmond Public Schools. So we want to make sure that, if we're putting in vacation time is actually getting processed the right way, or if we're not putting in vacation time, that's getting recognized too, or sick leave. And then the next high one here is, these are all high and they're in the order in which we want to do them, 1, 2, 3, but 4, 5, 6 here. Procurement contracting processes. Because we're in such a virtual environment and there are so many purchases going on, we want to look at the procurement and contracting process to ensure that the contracts are actually being validated correctly. Those contracts that have expired, that there are processes around making sure that these contracts are being renewed properly and that we're not operating off of an old contract and we're getting the best deals for Richmond Public Schools that there is. Even though we do a lot of piggybacking, as they call it, we still want to make sure we're getting the best bang for our buck here at Richmond Public Schools by doing those processes and controls. And then for medium, a medium one, which is in our book, medium audit or medium review, when we rank it as medium, we want to tackle it this year. I want to say we want to tackle it this year, but we may not get to it. And we may have to look at that in a future period in time. Again, all of this is based off a 2-man shop with my Ms. Holloway and myself. So we only have about, between the two of us, probably close to 4,000 hours to audit. And you're talking about a whole school district. So finance and accounts payable, I know that the administration is trying to purchase a new enterprise risk management system. So we kind of want to look at that, the accounts payable system, to ensure that they have controls in place prior to the process happening. And then here, the construction, the capital improvement program and construction management. While we know that the city looks at the actual school buildings, the new buildings and things of that nature, we still are doing maintenance for that from that end. So we want to make sure we're spending the maintenance, we're spending these things correctly and going about it that way, spending our money correctly, and then getting our reconciliations and making sure we're using on the right thing. School safety plans, again, while they're low, these are all low. We want to make sure that we actually have school safety plans and we're doing those things in the schools to keep the kids safe, as well as in this COVID era. We know that we're going to have to eventually, we're assuming and planning at some point, we're going to have to go back to school. So we want to make sure that those things are being done as well. And then lastly, bus driver overtime. Again, very manual process in nature. So we just want to make sure that those controls are there to make sure that they are actually recording overtime correctly. And then we talked about school activity funds, both 1 and, as you'll see later, both 1 and 2, these are student activity fund related audits, and we're doing those audits throughout the year continuously and providing reports and updates. I want to stop right here. Are there any questions about this so far? All right, I'll take silence as a no.
I have
Well,
a question or a
Yes.
comment.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the chat and I didn't see any, but Ms. Page,
Yes. I just want to say, this is more of a comment versus a question. Mr. Parker,
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you for this work, for this presentation, because this work that this presentation that you're providing the board tonight, this is a part of the board's oversight, ensuring that we are being good stewards of our taxpayers' dollars. And again, I just want to say thank you. And I'm just so happy that the board reinstated the internal auditor function, because it's so critical. This work is it's so critical. So again, thank you. You and
Yes,
Ms.
ma'am.
Holloway.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And Ms. Holloway, she's actually in the meeting. She plays a big part in all of this. So always kudos to her. So for your annual audits here, and we talked about audits 4 through 10 just about, but I still want to reiterate the annual audits that you don't hear us talk about much, which are the student activity funds. The business turnover audits is whenever there's a change in principal and or finance officer in the school. So whenever that happens, there's an audit that takes place to make sure that we're turning over funds, or the funds are being turned over properly as they were left. To date, right now, we have about 16 audits that need to happen for fiscal year 21. And that's a lot. So, and then the third one here is a fraud, waste, and abuse hotline. I'm not sure, many of you, some people may know, some people may not know that internal audit actually maintains the fraud, waste, and abuse hotline. And we take on all the calls, emails. People can report emails, calls, mail, even to the point when we're in the office or when we're back in the office, they can walk up and tell us about something, and we'll investigate to that point. And we just went over the actual risk assessment, and this is the actual work plan, pages 3 and 4. And in the universe, as I spoke about earlier, we take the whole org chart and we just pretty much separate it by department. I will say though, this is very simplified right now. As we get into this more and more, we're looking at actually auditing programs and performance of actual programs in the school system. We hear about all of the things and wonderful things that's being done. We want to go behind it, not just necessarily saying, I got you, but we want to make sure that those things that are being set forward and in place from the school system standpoint, we're doing performance audits to make sure that they're actually helpful to the kids, helpful to the community, and they're doing what the purpose is intended for them to do. Okay. Any other questions regarding the work plan itself?
I do not see any in the chat.
Okay. All right, so I want to go to the second document, which is the internal audit charter. If I can click on it here. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
All right. So what we have here is the internal audit charter. This charter for us for internal audit pretty much sets forth how we can operate within the school system. This charter was done, or a review of this charter hasn't been done since 2008, based on my research, at latest 2010. And so we thought it necessary with bringing back the internal audit department. We thought it necessary to go back, create the charter, recreate the charter pretty much, have the board look at it and adopt it So what this says forth, and I'll just go through it section by section. I won't read it in its entirety. Pretty much the purpose and mission of the audit department here in section 1, which is a little bit different than, you know, the purpose and mission pretty much of the operation side. We're here as this charter lets people know that we're here as the oversight and the arm of the board on an everyday working basis. And so while you guys are governing and having meetings, we're actually in the trenches, as I like to say, doing the work in the field, working and seeing things go forward, or addressing gaps and identifying those gaps that you all would think would be gaps. Okay. Our standards for professional auditing, we use a few different frameworks, of course, Institute of Internal Auditors, as well as the government auditing, GAGAS, which is the governmental auditing concepts that we use for that, and I'm getting tongue-tied. So, but those are what we use as our standards for professional auditing, our frameworks here in this place. And then again, our authority here, it just allows us to report to the board functionally. So pretty much, if whatever the board wants us to do, we come to you all functionally how we should operate. But it would allow us to go to the superintendent, Mr. Cameron, in this case, on an administrative level. So if we want to take off and really get guidance to a point of how things should be happening, from an administration standpoint, that's who we would go to, as well as using, you know, HR and people like that, if we want to talk about some of the personnel matters from how we should handle those things. All right. Any questions so far?
No.
All right. Independence, and I'm going down to the independence and objectivity part. The one major thing of the charter, it allows us and helps us with that independence and objectivity. Of course, as you know, as auditors, we kind of sit on the other side of the fence. Some people like to call us the police, gotcha guys, whatever you want to call us. But again, we have to be independent of all things operational. So while yes, and I know we've had this conversation in some other committee meetings, but yes, as internal auditors, we can help with the consultation and consulting and some of the, you know, advisement on certain things, but we cannot be the ones that actually put it in place and build it. So we can't build it and audit it at the same time. That's just like policing the police, and it doesn't happen, you know. So we can't do that. So this section here just allows us and helps us with our independence and objectivity here in the charter. Scroll down. And then here in our scope of internal audit activities, this pretty much tells us all of the things that we can do as internal auditors, from investigations to strategic objectives, risk, identifying risk, making sure that we address those, as well as compliance with applicable laws, policies, and procedures. And then for our responsibilities, this is a big one for us because we do have we're trying to set a stage now where the auditors are actually responsible for reporting at least annually to the board, a risk-based plan, which you just saw, which was the risk-based internal audit plan for your approval, as well as ensuring the engagement of the audit plan. We're executing those things and following up on corrective actions and findings, and reporting periodically to both senior management and the board. In this case, we say the board and the finance committee, which we'll talk about in a few seconds. right. Trying to hit the highlighted parts. And then here we also say that we want to perform consultant services which go beyond our normal auditing scope per se, or our auditing duties, which again, those advisory services and consultant services usually speak to sitting in trainings, like as we've done with the Student Activity Fund and with the principals already, sitting in trainings, trying to help people or help the stakeholders in the operational sections through what it is we look for when we audit, how to put controls in place for those that don't have them, and policies and procedures. Excuse me. And then the quality assurance improvement program. One of the big pieces of the quality assurance improvement program is to ensure that we as auditors actually are doing what we say we're doing. And we have a good set of qualities for quality audits in our department. And that would include surveys, questionnaires, things like that, that we would ask about how well we're doing to our stakeholder, or the auditee, as we call it, when we finish doing the audits. And over time, what our real goal is to go through a peer review when we have other districts or other auditors from some other locality or other place come in and look at what it is we do and what we've done from an audit standpoint, so that they can certify we're moving in the right direction. And then from an approval standpoint, I asked for a chief auditor or designee. I guess that would be me in this case, as well as the board, school board, or the finance committee chair to approve this and put it in play. And then we'll review it at least once every year or so to make sure we haven't had any changes or we don't need to update. Any questions?
Well, before we, I'm looking at that, but am I getting feedback everywhere? Okay. First of all, the proposal to expand the committee would be a policy change. So
Yes.
we can't vote on that tonight. We can talk about it and maybe we can reach a consensus. And I think also the charter will need to be vetted by our legal team before it's voted on and signed. But I will say that I'm very impressed with all of this, and obviously you have worked really diligently and very hard, and I thank you too. Did you want to also talk about the committee, or?
Yes. I actually, here we go. So this is just a small presentation. So in talking about the committee, what I found out is when we got here that, again, everything's gone. So we kind of need to put some things back together. And one of these is the expansion of either expanding the role and duties of finance, the current finance committee, which would be a policy change to a point, or creating an audit committee all by itself. And again, I just put here some basic roles of that audit committee or what the committee would do. And this is, again, here, oversee all audit activities and follow-up of corrective action plans. And when I say that is because currently we have a couple different audits, both, of course, we know the internal audit side is is who we would report to at that point, is we will report directly to the audit committee. And then the audit committee would serve as our liaison between the board, the entire board, and the internal audit shop. So pretty much the audit committee will become our quote unquote direct bosses at that point. And they will oversee all audit activities, both external, because I know we use Cherry Becker for some things right now, CAFR reviews, things of that nature. So they would be there for that, as well as all of the internal audit activities, as well as we would be responsible, and the audit committee would also be responsible for bringing to the board, in certain instances, updates on corrective action plans and things of that nature.
Okay, I see that
Go ahead.
Ms. Dorr has a comment.
Oh, hi, Mr. Parker, if you have more in your presentation, I'll let you finish, but I do have a question at the end. Or is
Okay.
that?
That's fine.
Okay, go ahead and then finish.
Okay. And so I was saying, again, now financial statement reporting, again, the audit committee itself, again, will be one of their task duties along with finance would be looking at, again, CAFR external audit reviews, and those are the financial statements that we actually send out, as well as financial policies and things that we do within the school system from a finance standpoint. And then last but not least is performance reviews, is evaluation of audit performance. And as I said before, serve as a liaison between the internal audit shop and the school board at its entirety. And so in talking with the finance committee, one of the things they asked me to do, and I don't have it all here in a lot, is to research other area audit committees within Virginia, as well as some other school districts that look just like us. And in Virginia, and I just put the Virginia school systems here, school systems that have independent audit committees: Fairfax County, Virginia Beach, Arlington Public Schools, Henrico County. However, Chesterfield has a joint audit, budget audit, and finance committee. They do all things audit, finance, and budget from a board standpoint. And here's the big piece, Ms. Owens, pretty much to what you were speaking to, right? I put together two options as a proposal per se. Is form a separate audit committee that consists of 3 board members and potentially 2 community members that are non-voting on that committee. That would give the community insight into having some input into what's going on. From that standpoint, the board members will be appointed by the school board policy per 1-5.1. And the community members would be selected through an application process for volunteer positions. Option 2, again, is what we've really been talking about, and I think this is kind of the way you all want to go, is expanding the finance committee to include the duties of the audit committee. Now, if expanded, the finance committee charter would need to be rewritten to include the duties of the audit committee at some point. The only other, and I would say con, and just because we're talking about it for discussion, it would make the meetings a little bit longer than what they are right now, because when we start to really report on audits, that could really drive, just explaining the audit, then listing out the findings, that right there could take you about 30-35 minutes in itself to really talk through what happened. And then after that, questions and comments.
All right, Ms. Dorr.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Parker. I think you answered a lot of my questions in your presentation, but I did want to my preference would be in terms of board involvement that we do the Chesterfield model, so option 2. However,
Okay.
I did want to check in with the rest of the board because this time last year, we did vote as a board, and I recall the board wanted us to set up an external audit committee. And so it's been some time since that discussion had happened. And so I wanted to make sure that we were honoring the board's will as it relates to finance and audit committee and specifically engaging the Richmond public.
Okay. Mr. Parker, would you mind stopping the screen sharing?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, so I can see everybody. And before we continue, I would like to be sure that Ms. Wilson knows that Dr. Sapini and Ms. Dorr have joined us.
Thank you. I do have that.
Okay. All right. Well, goodness, I almost lost myself. We will not vote then this evening, but is there any other discussion from any other members? I'm looking in the chat. Any feelings that people have about?
Madam Chair, you don't want to vote on the audit work plan itself this evening?
I don't want to vote on the charter.
Right, okay.
And I don't know that without voting on the charter, we could vote on the audit work plan, but I will defer to Ms. Thompson.
You can vote on the audit work plan without voting on the charter.
All right. In that case, Ms. Gibson would like to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question was regarding the two options for the audit committee. I'm wondering why we are, just the thought, again, between having two, and perhaps you spoke to this and I missed it, but if I recall the Council of Great City Schools, I'm not sure that it was just two community members. I'm just wondering the thinking behind having two specifically.
Sure, I can answer that one. Because we really don't want this to be a overwhelming committee, if I can say it that way. We really want, maybe three board members, because it's 9 of you all, so 3 board members for voting purposes, as well as 2 community members, those we would have to then determine the qualifications. Now I know in the city, on the city side, they have a CPA as well as a local business person of some sort that's there, and they have to be a business owner within those, they have to meet the qualifications. That's just pretty much standard based on my research. You usually see 3 people, 3 board members, and then 2 community members. And that just gives you 2 non-voting community members so that the community does have a voice.
Ms. Gibson, did you want to continue?
I think I would be interested. I mean, I understand the rationale and I can appreciate not wanting to have it be an unwieldy large group. But I could also see value in having, even a teacher serve on the committee, someone school-based. I could see value in having someone, even in a parent. I know certainly, we may not all, us regular folk, be experts in matters of finance, but folks in Richmond are pretty well attuned to wanting to make sure that we are crossing our T's and dotting our I's, and so I would, if we do go down the path of having the separate audit committee and including the community members, I would be open to considering, expanding the group perhaps, and allowing folks to participate that may not follow the perhaps traditional credentials.
Okay, well, we will put that in the discussion, and of course that we are not deciding tonight, but that is certainly worthy of consideration. And now, Ms. Page.
Thank you. I don't know what's going on with my chat, but I'm in favor of going forward with approving the audit work plan, because we have had opportunities to provide feedback. And so hopefully you have received feedback or the finance committee chair, so that we can get started with this work, because this is our oversight, and I'm in favor of option 2, because I know we've done a lot of research, regarding best practices. So I support moving forward with the audit work plan.
Okay. All right, would you like to make a motion to that effect, Ms. Page?
So move.
All right, so the motion is to approve the audit work plan as presented by Mr. Parker.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
We got 2 seconds from Ms. Dora, Ms. Burke. Pick one, Ms. Wilson. All right. Any further discussion? Okay, then let's have our vote.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Ms. Page,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby, Mr. Young,
Aye.
Dr. Sapini, Mrs. Dorr,
Yes.
Mr. Barlow,
Yes.
Ms. Gibson,
Yes.
Ms. Burke,
Yes.
Ms. Owen.
Yes, but Dr. Sapini
Yeah.
is here, so.
Yes.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Yes, yes.
Okay,
Okay, motion passes 8-0.
thank you. All right, and we will revisit the other items. And I also want to just say this, Milton, I'm sorry, Mr. Parker. It has come up before at our meetings that if you feel that you need additional people, our budget stuff will start fairly soon. And so again, that might be something you might want to work up a proposal if that is something that you see a need, because I know that has come up from board members.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
Ms. Gibson?
I second that, Ms. Owen.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, I got you. I hear you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Parker.
Thank you all.
Okay. So we will now move on to 3.02, the revision to the attendance policy. Who's taking that on?
That would be me.
All right, Mr. Hughes.
All right, good evening, Madam Chair Owen, Madam Vice Chair Burke, school board members, Superintendent Cameras. I'm pleased to bring for action the proposed revision to policy 8-2.4, student attendance and absences. Again, we're requesting that the policy is updated to expand the methods in which parents or guardians may submit a request for excused absences, and updated to add language allowing waiver of the 5-day time frame in which parents or guardians are required to request consideration for excused absences in the event extenuating circumstances make it impossible. See pages 2 and 3. Thank you, Superintendent Cameras. We haven't received any additional feedback since our last board meeting, so I look forward to you all approving this recommendation this evening.
All right. I see nothing in the chat. Is there a motion to approve this?
So moved, Madam Chair.
All right, Ms. Burke has moved to approve this change to the
Second.
attendance policy, and Ms. Page has seconded. Is there any discussion? I see none. So Ms. Wilson, let's
Ms.
have a
Page.
vote.
Ms. Page,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby, Mr. Young,
Aye.
Dr. Sapini,
Yes.
Ms. Gibson,
Yes.
Mr. Barlow,
Yes.
Ms. Dorr,
Yes.
Ms. Burke,
You're on mute, Ms. Burke. I think she's giving me a thumbs up. I think that's a yes.
okay. She's Ms. Owen,
Yes.
and Ms. Burke is still on mute. Motion passes 8-1. I'm sorry, 8-0.
All right, thank you very much. All right, moving on to 3.03, receive for action the suspension of policy 5-6.2, this grading policy. Who's doing this one?
It's me again.
Well, Mr. Hughes.
Hello there. We are also bringing forth a recommendation to suspend part of policy 5-6.2, which is our grading policy, specifically as it relates to elementary grading practices. So in previous years, we've assigned elementary students letter grades, A, B, C, D, and F, at the end of the marking periods to denote student progress and or mastery. Now, over the last few weeks, we have talked with and heard from a number of teachers and administrators about potential grading inequities caused by COVID. Therefore, we propose using the following grade denotations, which we believe provide a more balanced perspective for progress and mastery, as long as our instruction remains virtual. I give you a chance to read them over. We are asking for your vote on this suspension tonight, such that the new policy can go in effect for marking period 1. I'll pause there.
I see no comments. So I would ask, is there a motion to approve this change?
Madam Chair, the motion was sent to you all earlier in an email, if someone could. And it looks like Ms. Gibson wants to speak.
Okay, Ms. Gibson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was wondering, just as in terms of the policy, if we require 2 policy reads for this change. And I also was just wondering, I support making the revision. I appreciate the challenge that we have when we don't have equal access to technology across the district. And I wonder if you could just speak to the nuance between our elementary school students versus the middle school and high school students, and why this change is focused on the elementary school students.
All right,
Sure.
Mr. Hughes?
So we would say that for our middle and high school students, we need to give grades. First of all, for students trying to obtain high school credit in middle school, and to be able to award high school students credit for their classes. Additionally, we need grades in middle and high school for admissions to application schools, both inside and outside of RPS. Additionally, we would say that our middle school and high school students have more familiarity with technology, such as a greater chance of them turning in all of their assignments. And we would ask that teachers give ample opportunities for students to complete any makeup work before assigning a grade.
I do agree that this is probably not a second read. So we may need to vote to skip the first read, and because of the nature of our wanting to do this immediately. Is that right, Ms. Thompson? Yes, all right.
Yes. Yes, so the motion should include a motion to suspend the rules so that you can vote on it tonight.
And I do have that motion, and that is correct. It is to suspend the rules to vote on the modification of policy 5-6.2, pupil evaluation and grading, and approve modifying the grading policy for K-12 as recommended by the administration during virtual instruction.
Yes, exactly. So the motion, whoever makes the motion would be motioning for both.
Okay, so do I have somebody to make the motion as just expressed by Ms. Wilson?
Was it motion sent to us?
Yes, it was. It was in the email earlier today.
Is there someone who will make that motion?
Madam Chair, it sounds like Ms. Gibson has asked us to speak again.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Gibson.
Thank you, Mr. Barlow and Madam Chair. My follow-up question is, I appreciate the additional input regarding middle school and high school that Mr. Hughes provided. As we consider the specialty schools, though, it gives me additional pause. As I'm aware, there are many families within the district were asked if they had access to technology or not. And so, I worry then, as we are considering, specialty school enrollments, if now there are going to be some students who are, who had access to technology at the middle school and high school level, that's considered versus those students, again, that are using a tablet. I mean, I understand that those middle school students are a bit savvier, but I worry that that regardless of how savvy you are, you're still not able to do the same thing on a tablet that you can do on a laptop. And so I wonder, as we've been so focused on equity, how will that be addressed specifically as we're thinking about specialty school enrollment?
This is discussion, but I still would like to have the motion.
Madam Chair, I'll make the motion. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut off like that. I didn't
That's
put it in
fine.
chat.
Okay. So
I move to
okay.
I move to suspend the rules to vote on the modification of policy 5-6.2, pupil evaluation and grading, and approve modifying the grading policy for K through 5 as recommended by the administration during virtual instruction.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Ms. Burke made the motion, Ms. Page seconded. So Ms. Gibson has raised her concerns about middle and high school. And is there any other discussion from any other member of the board?
I have a question.
Okay.
My chat is not showing up, so that's why I'm having problems.
Okay, go
But
ahead.
my question is, so Superintendent Cameras, can you speak to it? So with the grading, we're talking about the specialty schools. I guess I'm not following where is the concern, or to ensure that our middle high school students, are actually receiving, the grades, or the processes are in place for our middle and high school students for the grading.
Mr. Cameras?
Not exactly sure what the question was just there, Ms. Page.
I'm trying to understand the concern that my colleague has, because I just want to ensure that our students have the necessary supports, with the grading. So I guess I'm just trying to get some understanding.
Sure. As Mr. Hughes noted, our guidance to teachers, and certainly at middle school and high school, is to give students ample opportunity through various modalities to complete their work. And when there is a technology issue of any kind, that great latitude is provided. If there is a student engaged in the specialty school application process that feels that they were impacted by a technology issue that may affect their application, I'm more than happy to have us look at those on a case-by-case basis and make whatever notations or adaptations we do need to make to ensure that students have an opportunity to be successful in that process.
Okay, so another question just came to mind. So how would this impact like our fifth graders who are moving on to middle school, applying to the middle school's specialty programs, such as the IB, the middle school IB program?
Well, the middle school IB program is not going to be application based this year, so it would not have any bearing. I would also note, since this policy suspension would apply equally to all students in the elementary grades, it would not advantage or disadvantage any beyond the others. But again, if there are any unique or individual concerns about how this plays out, we're of course more than happy to look into that and make whatever adjustments we think are necessary to address them.
So everything is being taken into consideration, like if a student is encountering problems with technology and so forth, accommodations are being made for those students.
Yes, and again, I would be more than happy to look at any applications that families felt needed closer scrutiny given any technology issues, of course.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Gibson and then Ms. Burke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the change that we're making at the elementary school level, is that intended to last the full year? And I wonder, I'm aware, the administration shared that the district received 7,000 additional laptops. Is that going to exhaust the remaining need for laptops? And what is the plan on distributing those? Is it in terms of, which grade levels will be receiving them, and what will be the time frame for, that all students will have the appropriate technology?
So the 7,000, yes, will more than exhaust the number of tablets that we have. Those Chromebooks are now in Richmond with our technology vendor. They're being configured, and they will be distributed over the next 2 to 3 weeks on a school by school basis. Each school is handling that distribution process individually, given their unique needs, the unique number of devices that need to be swapped out, and so on.
Okay, Ms. Burke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is, I'd like to move forward regarding the motion that's on the floor because it only deals with elementary level. And as stated during virtual instruction, if there are any changes that need to be made regarding middle or high, based upon the administration, whatever they do henceforth, I'm asking that we move forward with that. Because this is a discussion that we do need to have regarding the laptops and the needs of our students. But I'm very excited about elementary age children having this opportunity with the scale that was shown tonight. I really wish we could get to the point where that would be our scale for K1 and 2 henceforth, but that's not the topic tonight. But I would like to see us move forward and then continue the conversation regarding middle and high, because it is one that needs to be done. Thank you.
Ms. Owen,
Right.
if I may,
Yeah.
I just wanted to note, as a philosophical matter, the administration agrees with Ms. Burke in terms of the long-term approach to elementary grades. For now, just to keep things simple, we're proposing that as long as we are virtual, we would adopt this approach. But I do think it is worth us considering this as a permanent change down the road.
Okay, thank you. All right, then let's have our vote.
Okay, the motion was made by Ms. Burke and it was seconded by Ms. Page. Mrs. Page,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby, Mr. Young,
Aye.
Dr. Sapini, Dr. Sapini,
Yes.
Ms. Dorr,
Yes.
Mr. Barlow,
Yes.
Ms. Gibson,
Yes.
Ms. Burke,
Yes.
Ms. Owen,
Yes,
motion passes.
okay, thank you. All right.
Thank you all.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I just said thank you, I just
Oh.
want to thank everyone.
Oh, okay. Then moving on, we go to receive for action budget transfers.
Yes, good evening. This evening, I bring forward to you a budget transfer to move money out of our custodial temporary contracted services line to create 2 full-time RPS positions, one to serve at the new Cardinal Elementary and one to serve at Huguenot, 2 of our buildings with some of the greater square footage. So there is no difference in cost and likely an increase in service.
Do I have a motion to that effect? To support the budget transfer?
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Yeah, let's get the motion and then we'll have discussion, okay? Is anybody gonna make a
So
motion?
moved.
All right, thank you, Ms. Page. Is there a second?
Second,
Thank you, Ms. Burke. All right, Mr. Barlow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Generally speaking, I'm encouraged to see us moving from contracted services to full-time staff when we can do that. So I'm glad to see that. But can you clarify whether these dollars that were that have been allocated for the existing custodial services are being spent at those schools already, or does this create any potential gaps for, I trust the administration to know where we need the custodial support, but I'm just curious to know whether these dollars have been allocated towards other schools in the past.
Well, we are currently below the total number of custodians we need across the district based on best practices for square footage. So many schools would benefit from additional custodial support. And you may see us bringing forth in the budget season the opportunity to add staff. We selected these two given the greatest gap and the largest square footage, or some of the largest square footage.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad to hear that we may be seeing more requests in the future.
Yes.
Okay, I don't see any other discussions. So we will move to the approval, the vote.
Okay, the motion to approve the budget transfers was made by Ms. Page, seconded by Ms. Burke. Mr. Young,
Aye.
Dr. Sapini,
Yes.
Mrs. Dorr,
yes.
Ms. Cosby, Mrs. Page,
Yes.
Ms. Gibson,
Yes.
Mr. Barlow,
Yes.
Mrs. Burke,
Yes.
Ms. Owen.
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and then the personnel actions. Ms. Lee, Dr. Lee.
Yes, good evening. I bring forth to you tonight's personnel actions, which include the nomination of 12 employees, the contract change of 9 employees, the resignation of 5 employees, the returning of leave of 3 employees, the retirement of 2 employees, the name change of 2 employees, and the death of 2 employees.
Thank you, Ms. Lee, Dr. Lee. Is there a motion to approve the personnel actions as presented by Dr. Lee?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Well,
Second.
Mr. Barlow and Ms. Burke made the motion and seconded it. I do not see discussion.
Okay, Ms. Page. Mrs. Page. Ms. Cosby. Mr. Young,
Aye.
Dr. Sapini,
Yes.
Ms. Dorr,
Yes.
Ms. Gibson,
Yes.
Mr. Barlow.
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Burke,
Yes.
Ms. Owen,
Yes,
and is Ms. Page still here? Did she vote? I didn't hear her.
I didn't either.
Mrs. Page? Okay, motion passes.
Okay. Then, do we have any reports from board members attending committee meetings and conferences?
I did not receive any, Madam Chair.
I don't see anybody leaping to volunteer to present one.
Yeah, actually, Madam Chair, I think it may be worth noting real quickly, because I know that we have received, many board members have received feedback about the admissions test at Maggie Walker. I think I mentioned at the last meeting that we did suspend the admissions test for this year due to challenges administering in the COVID environment. There have been broader calls, and I've been on the record saying I support removing that requirement. It does not sound that it does not seem like it's the most effective way to determine whether students will succeed at Maggie Walker, and it does appear to have unintended consequences, at best unintended consequences with respect to the admissions at the school and the demographics of the students that are accepted. So in the interest of equity, I intend to support removing that requirement unless I hear otherwise from the board. And I wanted to make sure that was on everyone's collective radar.
Thank you, Mr. Barlow. And I would also like to tell all those folks that this board can only recommend the decision to remove that admission test permanently. Mr. Barlow is our very able representative on that board, but they're the ones that will have to make that decision. So thank you, Mr. Barlow. All right, then moving on to administration business, to receive a verbal update. I'm sorry, Ms. Dorr.
Sorry. Mr. Barlow, I wonder, I would like to make a motion in support of, or if you'd like to make the motion in support of that, just to get on the record that this school board supports removing the admissions test.
Sure. I do think that it'll necessarily require broader conversation about how we improve admissions practices at the school. But I think it would be great to have us on record as a board with respect to the admissions test. I'll gladly move for a resolution that the Richmond School Board supports permanent removal of the current admissions test at the Maggie L. Walker Governor's School.
Second.
You get that, Ms. Wilson?
I'm typing it to you.
I'm sorry, not all of it. No, I did not.
I just typed it to you, Mrs. Wilson.
I'm sorry, say that again.
It's in the chat.
Thank you. So Mr. Barlow moved to approve a resolution that the Richmond School Board supports permanent removal of the admission test at the Maggie Walker Governor's School, and that was seconded by Mrs. Dorr.
Yes.
Okay.
Is there discussion from anyone else? No? All right, then Ms. Wilson?
Ms. Dorr?
Yes.
Mr. Barlow?
Yes.
Ms. Gibson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Dr. Sapini?
Yes.
Ms. Cosby? Ms. Burke?
Yes.
Ms. Owen?
Yes.
And Mrs. Page? Motion passes.
Okay. Now, we're going to receive a verbal update on the VDOE MOU.
Thank you, Ms. Owen. First of all, thank you to you and Ms. Burke and Mr. Barlow for joining us for our biannual memorandum of understanding meeting with Superintendent Dr. James Lane and President Dan Gecker from the Virginia Board of Education. I would say it was a largely fruitful and positive discussion. We reported out on a number of items. On the instructional front, we spent a fair amount of time on our RTI framework, response to intervention, which is education speak for how we respond when students are not as successful as we would like with sort of the core instruction, what kinds of interventions that we provide. I was thrilled that Dr. Lane was particularly impressed with the framework that we have in place. We also talked about obviously our virtual school semester and the technology pieces from devices to internet and other supports. Discussed a little bit about attendance and other matters as well. But by and large, as I said, a very positive and fruitful discussion. I'm glad to throw it to Ms. Owen or Ms. Burke or Mr. Barlow, who were present, to add any additional information. We also included in board docs the notes that I believe Angie took. So thank you, Ms. Wilson, for those as well.
You're welcome.
I don't see anything in the chat. Ms. Burke, you're on mute. There
Yes,
we go.
thank you, Madam Chair. I was trying to fill in my chat. Thank you so very much. Excuse me. I do hope that everyone does take the time to read if you haven't already. I was very pleased with the feedback from Dr. Lane and Mr. Gecker. It was very, very positive, very favorable. It's quite evident that our team, our administrative team, is working very hard and we're focused. They were very pleased with the curriculum adjustments that we've made, as well as knowing that everyone in the United States and beyond, everyone's trying to get Chromebooks, how we tried many months ago and that we're working through that. They also were very pleased with many of the obstacles that we have within our communities. And I really picked up, it wasn't stated directly, but as you read through the notes and listening to comments such as Dr. Lane stated that he reads the superintendent's RPS Direct every day. So they really have a handle on what we're doing from day to day. And I also think and I believe that in the long run, when COVID is done, that we're going to be seen as a system that has really stayed the course in meeting the needs of every child. So the report was favorable, but it was also, I've sat on other MOUs and it wasn't always delightful. So this one was one of the best I've attended in many, many, many years. And I'm very pleased and I thank the administration for their hard work, their diligence, and just continuing to do what is right by every child. So thank you to the administration and well done. I'm pleased.
Thank you, Ms. Burke.
All right, Mr. Barlow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also wanted to echo a lot of what Ms. Burke said. I was generally pleased with the level of positivity in the discussion, the understanding of the challenges that the unique challenges that we as a district face relate to COVID compared to some of the surrounding jurisdictions. And I also appreciate the general understanding amongst everyone involved of resource challenges for RPS and an acknowledgement that that we do need more resources and need to continue to advocate on the state level and on the city level. I think when we first entered into discussions about the MOU, one of the things that we tried to push in the narrative when we were trying to negotiate the MOU was some broader understanding or something built into the framework of the agreement that that the VDOE and the Virginia and the board would help determine where there may be shortfalls or gaps in resources that contribute to some of the challenges that we have as a school district. And although that's not included in the MOU overtly, I was really glad to hear discussion about that on a broader scale and the mutual understanding that the VDOE and RPS has with respect to our resource challenges.
Thank you, Mr. Barlow. I agree with what both of you said. And I would add that I really felt as though they also, in addition to telling us, they also listened to what our superintendent had to say about our concerns, especially about this average daily membership and the funding thereof. I mean, they really were, it was a very collaborative conversation, and I appreciated everything that went on. So thank you again to your administration for all your hard work. I know you all work 7 days a week, and which isn't always healthy. And so we will now move on to the update on decision-making process for the second semester.
Thank you, Ms. Owen. And I'm going to share my screen, so give me 1 second. I'm gonna try to anyway, hold on. Okay. There we go. All right. Well, before I dive in on the second semester, I just want to take an opportunity to say thank you to our teachers and our bus drivers and our nutrition workers and our counselors and social workers and family liaisons and principals, everybody at RPS who has worked so incredibly hard over the last several months to make the first semester as successful as it possibly can be. And while, of course, there are many things that we need to continue to focus on and improve to ensure that our children are successful, I do think there's a lot to be proud of. And that really starts with the incredible people in our schools who are making virtual work as best as possible for our young people. So I want to say thank you, and to our families. And I say this as superintendent and as a father myself. We know that the virtual semester is not easy. It has created new demands of all kinds. It has also created some new opportunities and some silver linings, but we know certainly for families and families that are working, two parents, single parents, whatever the case may be, that there have been a number of stressors. And so to any parents just watching, I do want to say on behalf of the system, thank you. Thank you for doing all that you can to help us be helpful to your children. We know it has been challenging, and we will continue to do everything we can to support you during this time. Okay, so let's dive in. What we're going to do tonight is just lay out a framework for making a decision about the second semester. Just to clarify for anyone watching, we're not making that decision tonight, nor will we do so for a few weeks. But we do want to lay out some data points and some activities that we will engage in to be thoughtful about this decision. As a reminder, I recommended and the board voted to go virtual for the first semester. The board also committed to making the decision about the second semester prior to winter break. We think that is important for a number of reasons, not the least of which is to let our families and our staff plan accordingly. And we think doing that prior to the 2-week winter break would be very, very helpful. 3 strands of our work to help make that decision. First, of course, to gather input directly from our families and our staff. We'll do that through a survey, but also through other engagements that I'll talk about in a second. We also will, of course, look at the latest health information from the Richmond City Health District and from the Virginia Department of Health. And then third, assess our readiness in terms of facilities and other health and safety measures. So let's dive in first on the engagement. Starting next week, we will launch a survey to all families and staff. We'll then share preliminary response at the November 16th board meeting, and then final response at the December 7th meeting. So that'll give us about a month to really get the word out and get response rate, a high response rate from across the school division, making sure that all groups of students and families are fully represented. We will ask about remaining virtual for the second semester, what the preference is for that. I'm also looking at potentially a hybrid model where we would have 2 days in person, 3 days virtual. I don't think a full in-person option would necessarily be viable given the need for physical distancing. So these appear to be the 2 main options at this point. We'll also engage the community through a number of other mechanisms. We'll dedicate our RPS Live, RPS in Vivo, my superintendent's advisory councils with students, teachers, principals, families, our community walks, which are so incredible. I recently had a chance to talk with one of our family liaisons. Over the course of one morning, they knocked on every door in Gilpin Court. Truly incredible. And we're doing that each week throughout the city. So another very direct hands-on way of gathering feedback and input about the second semester. And then we still have our reopening committee, which we continue to meet with, and we will of course engage with them as well so that they can help us make this decision. Looking at health data, of course, we will be looking at both the directionality and magnitude of a variety of COVID-19 data points, including the positivity rate, hospitalization rate, sadly the death rate, but also here in Richmond with a special focus on our Black and Latino and Hispanic communities. I do want to note that I know a number of comparisons are being made between Richmond City and the surrounding counties in terms of their plans. We are demographically a very different school system, both in terms of the students and families we serve, but also in terms of our staff. I also want to note, you can't just look at Richmond City numbers. We, in RPS, have a much higher percentage of students of color than there are in the city as a whole. So we're about 90% students of color, whereas the city of Richmond is somewhere in the 50 to 60%. So a very significant difference there, which is why we really want to make sure that we're lifting up that specific data. Dr. Avula is available to be responsive to the board's questions on both November 16th and December 7th. For anyone watching, Dr. Avula is the director of the Richmond City and Henrico Health Departments. And we have included 2 links, which are really the hubs for coronavirus statistics in our region. And then in terms of school readiness, we will be looking at a number of areas. First, our ability to effectuate the 5 CDC mitigation strategies. So of course, the use of masks, physical distancing, hand hygiene and respiratory etiquette, cleaning and disinfection, and then the ability to do contact tracing. We will also be assessing the readiness of our bathrooms. As we talked about recently at a school board meeting, we are assessing them all against a rubric level 1, which is basically full functionality. Level 2 is full functionality plus some aesthetic upgrades. 3, we'll be looking at air quality and the percentage of classrooms that we would be able to implement air filtration systems to ensure that we are prepared for in-person education. And then last, but certainly not least, our ability to provide transportation with physical distancing and maintain food distribution for families that chose not to come back in person. And that is quite a challenge, I do want to note, but we will explore that as well. Here's our proposed timeline tonight, laying out the process. Of course, welcome your feedback about other steps or adjustments to take. We'll launch the survey next week, look at some initial data on the 16th of November. We'll have an RPS Live dedicated to this topic on the 18th, RPS in Vivo dedicated to this topic on the 19th. Throughout November, community walks focused on gathering feedback. And then the goal would be to make a decision at our December 7th board meeting. That's our last meeting before winter break. And so to meet that objective of making the decision prior to winter break, that is when we would need to make that decision. I do want to note, I am deeply concerned about the direction that the coronavirus is taking, not only nationally, but here in Virginia. We had another positive case today, a staff member from Fisher Elementary. And I have concerns not only about the trajectory, but the trajectory as we enter into the winter months. And so that is why I did share earlier in the week at this point I am not optimistic about our ability to come back in person for the second semester. Obviously, there is a lot of data to be gathered and a lot of feedback to be gathered, but that is where I sense things are heading at this moment. And so I did want to just share that as an initial assessment of where we are, again, particularly given the surge of the virus. But of course, lots of feedback to gather, lots of data to gather that we will present and work our way through and hopefully make that decision by December 7th. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Camrus. We have questions and comments. First from Ms. Dorr, then Mr. Barlow, Ms. Page, and Ms. Gibson.
Thank you. And thanks for outlining this. I'm glad to see it, and thank you. I want to echo also your kind words to the RPS community, and certainly echo those same sentiments. I have three things. One, on the survey, I know there was last time around, folks could fill out the survey multiple times, which I think is fine because information changes and you reserve the right to change your mind. But I wonder if we could just look into making sure that we have some kind of control around folks potentially taking the survey 10, 20, 50 times to skew the results. Second, I would love to see, I think a lot of the decisions that are being made right now about the virus are not based in fact. And I would love to see from the health department, maybe they could help us with a framework on community transmission rates at this level. This means X risk for RPS. So we know that community transmission rates are increasing, but if we all go on shutdown in December and community transmission rates go down, what does that mean? So just to give people some idea of the relative levels of risk based on what's happening in the community so that we can gauge what we need to do as a board. And then third, and this is maybe a question for Dr. Avula, but I'll pose it here to see if potentially we can consider this, or at least I would like an update. At the talk with experts a couple of months ago, there was some data about the rate of transmission among students under the age of 11. And I know that in Chesterfield there have been some confirmed cases of children. And so I would just like an update on, does that research still hold? Is there, is there still concern about children under the age of 11? And or has that gone younger? I received a couple of emails from pediatricians today saying, urging us to consider a K-2 in-person option. And I don't feel like I have any information as a non-medical professional to be able to speak to that intelligently. So I would just love for Dr. Avula to talk about that. And if the research is still holding, I suspect there's some concerns about that given what's happening in the surrounding counties. But if the research does hold, then I would like to see it as an option. If the research is not holding, then I would like to be able to explain that to the public.
We can definitely have Dr. Avula speak to all those things. On the survey, we'll certainly try to figure out a solution to that issue. We're trying to balance a completely anonymous survey where people feel comfortable fully sharing their perspective with one that precludes you from entering multiple times. But we will take that charge and try to figure out a solution.
Okay, then Mr. Barlow.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Camrus, for bringing this decision-making timeline to us and an idea of what the framework will look like. And I have to say, it is disconcerting to see continued uptick in COVID cases here in the Richmond area. And I want to thank you in particular for noting the impact we're seeing of COVID in our communities of color and in the Black and Latinx communities. early on in this pandemic, there was a lot of talk about the pandemic being the great equalizer and being this disease that impacts everyone the same way. And the fact of the matter we know now is that that's not true. And we do have to be particularly sensitive to this issue as a school division. So I think that's something that we need to continue to communicate as we make this decision, and we are compared to the counties, or we are compared to other school districts that have made the decision to go back in part. I'll say my sister-in-law is a high school teacher in Georgia, and they decided to go back in person. And actually, it's a great acclaim by senior government officials in the U.S. Betsy DeVos came down to the school. Their superintendent went up to go meet with Donald Trump to get, sort of a cheerleading thing for their decision to reopen. And they just had to shut down because of spread of COVID through their school. And I understand that there's a desire at times to politicize this, or there's a desire at times to sort of hope that this disease isn't as serious as it is, but it is a very real concern. And with that in mind, and given that even the administration at this point is saying that a full return is unlikely, I also think that this could be a time for us to reflect on what has been going well in our virtual instruction this semester, to take the opportunity to see what areas there are for improvement if we are indeed going to be going back to a fully or largely virtual semester in the spring. So my hope is that while we are considering the data and considering whether a partial in-person return is possible, that we also see what we may be able to jumpstart and improve for the second semester, because I've got at this point, I'm going to have a hard time supporting an in-person return really almost on any level, unless I see some data that blows my mind. So I want to make sure that we're still driving for improvement in the virtual setting.
All right, thank you, Mr. Barlow. Ms. Page?
Yes, so thank you, Superintendent Cameras, for this information, and thank you for being proactive again. But my question is the communication piece. Just ensuring that we are reaching out to all of our families. And so have we thought about possibly PSA announcements on the radio, the radio stations, television? Because I just want to make sure that when we start receiving feedback from families, we may have some parts of the city that may not have heard, whatever the case may be. I just want to make sure that we are doing everything within our power to communicate this information to our parents so that we can receive accurate feedback.
Yes, we do have a media strategy as well, both TV, radio. I'm not sure if the board is aware, I actually do Radio Poder, which is a Spanish language radio station every Thursday morning at 9 a.m. I have a standing piece. I also do Gary Flowers every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. So we're trying to set up more of those consistent touch points where the community knows they can always hear directly from me. We found that's a really good way to connect with some communities that may not immediately respond to a survey or things of that nature. So I think that's going to be critical. And also I cannot overstate how important those community walks are. There's nothing like just talking to somebody face to face with a mask and to share the information with them and get their feedback. So we will be using our family liaisons as part of that effort as well.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Gibson and then Ms. Burke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a few thoughts. I think much like Mr. Barlow stated, I would feel quite, I mean, at this stage, I feel very uneasy at thinking about going in person. I think we're talking about risk and risk mitigation and not wanting to overstate the risk. That makes me very uneasy given the fact that, we have had a death in the district, and one death is one too many. And so while the risk may be small, it's sizable. So I do take this very seriously. My request is, as we're looking at data, I would like to see the data on a school level. So while there's certainly value to seeing, for instance, the percentage of schools that will have working sinks, as we are focused on equity, I think it's important that we share with the public, what each school scenario looks like, because that certainly impacts how people will feel. I know as we were talking about the bathroom blitz earlier, there were folks from the press that were eager to see, what the bathrooms were looking like as we were doing that. And if there is a way that, if we are considering going forward, I think we owe it to the public to kind of, allow them to see, how things are looking in our schools. I also, to be frank, and this is, one of those TMI things, but, like most everyone, TikTok keeps me somewhat sane. And I'll say that, the teacher TikToks are really killing it. And there's quite a few that are amusing because they speak to kind of the, frankly, insanity of those teachers that are going back and forth between virtual and hybrid. And so I think before we contemplate such a shift, how can we fully appreciate what that would look like in reality for our staff? What does that require on a true, day-to-day? Because what it feels like it could be is taking all of what teachers are doing now, which I understand to be, a larger workload than they had before, and then pairing that with in person, we could reach the point of truly creating an untenable pressure pot that I'm sensitive to. And so, if there are I welcome listening to perhaps the Henrico Education Association, Chesterfield Teachers Association, what input they've had from their teachers that are perhaps working under those circumstances. But I want to make sure that as we move forward, we've already introduced a change with changing the schedule once. I just want to make sure we don't have so much change on top of change that that folks are literally, feeling at a breaking point.
If I may, Ms. Owen,
Yeah.
I do think there is extraordinary value to stability. And I think that goes for our teachers and for our families. And I do think, again, after some thoughtful discussion, if we do decide to stay the course with virtual, that stability, I think, could be profoundly positive, despite all of the challenges with virtual for both our teachers, as you noted, Ms. Gibson, and also for our students. I do have real concerns about the hybrid schedule, the instability, the shifting, the back and forth, and the impact that would have as well.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Burke?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Cameron's just stated what I wanted to get to eventually. I'm really repeating some of the information, getting back to what Mr. Barlow stated regarding the population of which we serve, our communities, and being mindful that the majority of our children are Black and brown students. And when we think in terms of healthcare, when you think in terms of meeting their needs, it is a challenge. It is a challenge. In walking this weekend, I walked 2 public housing courts this weekend, and it is so true. Our parents sincerely appreciate the community walks, and that did come up in conversation. Every parent that had smaller children, they would look at me uniquely when talking about the Chromebook lessons. A lot of them enjoyed it. A lot of them see their students now understanding better what's going on. So it's really from day to day. So it's brought on a relationship piece that I think whenever we do go back, that we didn't have beforehand. So that's a positive in terms of the COVID. There's the relationship pieces in place, and also the opportunity to talk with the teachers, which teachers have always been accessible, but it seems like it's a difference. It's a difference. But I do agree wholeheartedly regarding the stability. It takes many times of repeated behavior in order for it to go forward smoothly. And I'm glad a decision will be made in December. But I'm thinking when we move into second semester, if we're still stable and continue with the virtual learning, that will come out better in the end so far as meeting the needs of our students. Stability is important for all of us, all of us, all of us. And I'm also very pleased to hear the child savers piece. I think I read someplace regarding being there for the mental health or just the overall well-being. That's most important. What another thought in talking to some high school students, the seniors are missing out on their activities. They don't like that part. They want the senior day, of course, the prom, that's the sports, that's very hard. But they do like the opportunity of the virtual piece because they can catch up on their lessons when they can. A lot of them work part-time jobs, particularly in my area, my district. So if they go to their part-time job after 4 and don't get home until 11 or whatever else, or 10, whatever the law is in place for minors to come back in, but they feel that they have a better handle on being successful. I look forward to seeing their grades. I noticed also the attendance, particularly for Armstrong. I'm pleased. It's not perfect, but it's much better than what it's been. So as we move forward, however we go back to school, whether it's in January, February, or whether it's 2021, September, or whenever, I hope that we have a conversation regarding having students to be able to not miss days due to disciplinary reasons or whatever else. We have a system in place that's working. So why not take it to the next level? But in all sincerity, as Mr. Barlow stated, I'm not embracing at this point return to school in February. Now, we get a miraculous blessing, then that turns everything around. But right now, a lot of people are scared, and they have a right to be. So I'm glad that we in the city of Richmond are thinking about our children and knowing that our population isn't the same as certain parts of Henrico County, Chesterfield County, and we can be compared to Petersburg, maybe parts of Norfolk, but being real that we walk different grounds. We walk different grounds. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burke. I don't see anyone else, but I would like to just say one quick thing about it. When we do go back, there will be people coming into Richmond schools who live in other communities. So that will also concern me a great deal. So thank you for this, and I look forward to hearing all the data as we go forward in this process.
Thank you, Ms. Owen.
Okay, so now verbal update on the child care facilities.
Sure. Good evening again. Just wanted to give a brief update on where we are with the child care facilities. I've been doing pop-in visits at each of them, as well as staying in close communication with the staff to ensure that any needs are met. So just to go through each of the 3 partners briefly, Peter Paul Development Center opened at MLK on the 26th. They have about 38 or so students registered. However, in the first week, had about 13 students come over the course of that first week. So they do not have a waiting list at this time, and are continuing to do outreach and have availability for families that have need. Blackwell has been in operation now for about a month. They have a little under 50 students. As a reminder, those students at the Blackwell site are there because they are receiving special therapeutic services. So that is through referral only. And our teachers, social workers, principals, et cetera, are the ones making those referrals for Blackwell. So as more referrals come in, they do have ability to expand up as well. And then the YMCA has also been operating their Miles Jones site since the beginning. They have about 40-ish students or so on site. They are currently constrained, though, by staffing issues within their organization, and are looking to be able to bring on additional staff to pull kids off the wait list at Miles Jones. They will open at Holton on Wednesday and hope to open based on need at Huguenot on November 30th.
All right.
Each one of the sites is also submitting to me their rosters so that we can confirm that 2/3 of the participants meet the eligibility requirements that the board directed as part of the MOU.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Udesco. Ms. Page has a question. Ms. Page, you're on mute.
Yes, my question is, I guess, do we see that some of the sites are maybe under-enrolled? Are we really meeting the needs of our families in our communities? I guess, what have been some of the challenges? Like, is transportation a barrier? Is that a way that we can support more of our families? So do we have any information regarding that? Where are we with the transportation piece?
So I would say two things. One, as the board's decision was, we are not providing transportation.
I know that.
So that is an impediment, I believe, at the Miles Jones site. I will note that Blackwell is providing their own transportation.
Right.
So RBHA does have vans, and they submitted a transportation plan to ensure health and safety protocols were in place. But I do hear that being an issue at Miles Jones. I am not sure if that is an issue yet at Peter Paul, just because they've only been open 1 week. But I did also hear some comments just around concerns of the unknown, of being with a group of up to 9 other students in a classroom, that while physical distancing is in place and masks are worn the whole time, especially with the CDC's recent guidance coming out about what contact and exposure looks like, that it's not a sustained 15 minutes with one individual who may be positive, but it could be multiple exposures of shorter duration with multiple people. I think families have some concerns about just not knowing what other families are doing. I'm actually hearing of increased popularity of some of the smaller learning centers run through churches,
Mhm.
where I think there may be a kind of a well-known community of that's our church family. There's only 5 families here. So there's maybe only 5 to 10 students total instead of the potential for up to 100 students in a center. So I do think that while I would certainly be remiss to suggest that all needs are being met, I do think that needs are being met in some instances in other settings or through informal family-based pods.
Right, so I'll be curious to know if some of the providers, because I knew we weren't providing transportation, but if some of the providers were looking at to provide some transportation support. Yeah, but I have heard from a lot of parents, the fears, their concerns being in, a setting where it's a large number of students, like you said, versus the churches, which is a smaller setting, more familiarity. So yes, but I would just.
And I will note that the YMCA did share with me that they wanted to look into transportation. I'm not sure if that's viable for them at this point, but I do know they recognized it as a need, and we're hoping to explore that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Ms. Page. Ms. Burke?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this may have been on one of the superintendent's RPS direct, I'm not sure. But can you remind us as to how parents are asking, where can I register my child? Where do I go? How do I do that online? Would you remind us, please? And hopefully, if it's not on the RPS direct, some parents, would you be so kind as to add some information, or either the city? Some parents do want to take advantage of it. Some parents do. So how do we register? Where do we go?
Absolutely. So we'll make sure that's in Wednesday's RPS Direct, the link to Peter Paul's website, which has registration. And then on the YMCA's website, if you click through to Richmond, not only are there registration links for the Miles Jones and the Holton site, they also have 2 churches that you can register for there as well. So we can get that out through a couple of communication formats. Thank you.
One other question, and I know this is the city's program and not ours per se, but for those, as you mentioned, those small pods, I'm thinking about the neighborhood churches in the East End, and there's also one I know of 2 in Southside. Would that be, how do people find out about that?
Yes, that if you go to, it's RVA 1, I don't want to misspeak here publicly. Give me
Well, I'll get it when you put it in the
Okay.
RPS Direct, if we can have that as well, because some persons didn't know about a couple of churches in their neighborhood who are providing. I visited one of them, and it's very, very nicely done. And you're exactly right. It's basically the church family or people who live in walking distance to that church's site. So
Yes.
it would be great if people can find out about that. And it's
It is,
also
just so I could correct myself here, it is help1, the number 1, rva.org, and you can put in your zip code and it connects you to resources, but we'll share that as well.
Thank you.
Help1rva.org.
Help1rva.org. .org. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I do not see further comments or questions. So I'll say thank you, Ms. Hudesco, for that report. And now we have received for information the protocols for health and safety. But now, is that just posted in board docs?
There are 3 website links in the public information section that take you to 3 pages on our website that have all of that information.
All right. Thank you very much. And if anyone in the public needs that, that's where it is. All right. Is there any new business? Are there any announcements? Well, I'm very pleased to tell you we have no business that needs to be conducted and closed. All right, now, this might be a record, but I don't see anybody arguing with me. So I'm going to go ahead and say good night all. I hereby adjourn this meeting.